the links to join the channel here over at SubScribeStar. So Candace Owens versus Ben Shapiro, where Ben invites her to debate, and they're going back and forth trying to do it on each other's, trying to do it on their own platform to monetize the hell out of it. And then he sues to stop her from talking, which seems a little sus. First of all, let me alienate the audience by saying that anyone who is this big in the mainstream is not moving the needle. They're all trapped in a golden cage. They're not over target. And this is coming from a pro Candace Owens bias for this. To have a big social media footprint in the mainstream is lucrative at their level. You're talking about companies that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. YouTube and Rumble and whatever platforms Daily Wire streams on have very much caught up to the mainstream media. And if they're in the mainstream, they're not usually over target because you get a lot of negative attention from the media and the people who want to control the narrative when you start getting close to the target. So what they do is a lot of penultimate deflection to get you focused on this other things that are close but not ultimately going to make a difference. It's this spectrum where there's bounds on the left and the right, and they allow you to have as much fierce debate within that spectrum as possible, so you get all your emotional rage out. It's like why the bread and circuses, the modern bread and circuses, are the sports ball in the West, where people get so worked up over sports ball, and people look at that, you look at that and you go like, yeah, that's a deflection activity. It's to keep you away from looking at what your governments are doing to you. It's like, never watch sports ball again. Use that energy to, seek peaceful league redress of grievance. So the thing is, there is a spectrum. To be fair, when I have listened to Salty a few times, every few months, I heard him once tell white people to start their own clubs, their own in-groups types of things, which surprised me so much that I actually downloaded the stream. It's like 3 gigabytes sitting on my phone, because a statement like that is actually over target. It's something that the real right wing is pushing. So, every once in a while, one of those type of YouTube Rumble channels will come out and say something that is actually the nucleus, the core, something real. So credit where it's due. So there's this spectrum of the right-ish, where the cat guy, I think he's like Turd Cat or something, Mark Dice, Crowder, InfoWars, Paul Joseph Watson. There's a bunch of those kind of people who are allowed on YouTube, and they dance around the issues mostly, where the YouTube is like the left wing of the right wing group. And then there's Rumble, which is getting a little bit closer to target. Then there's Odyssey, and you've got people like Psychodrilla on Odyssey and the rest of the super alternative media who are able to say anything they want over there, and they very much do. And it's a lot of fun. It's like Odyssey live streams are just friggin' wild. So there are degrees to this kind of stuff. But the Daily Wire is complete, controlled, glowing deflection media, to the point where they showed some of their colors when they were negotiating with Crowder, I think last year, who himself is just milquetoast right of center media, who, the left wing looks at all these people and they go, literally Hugo Boss, for Ben Shapiro and the rest. It's just as ridiculous as it sounds. But they had Candace Owens working for them, but she apparently had a mind of her own, and Kanye West was starting to get involved in politics, and she was defending his right to free speech. But Ben Shapiro was triggered by the puppets who were starting to leave the plantation a little bit, and people started to look at Shapiro and see that he wasn't actually a free speech conservative that they thought he was. And there's been a bunch of little clips that have come out from Shapiro that are kind of awakening the normies a little bit, where you hear him say things, you're like, wait a minute, what exactly are you conserving? He was for controlling the narrative and telling his audience what to think and not how to think, or to try to present ideas as fairly as possible, which, originally what the media was for. So Candace leaves the Daily Wire, which for her was a convenience because they probably provided much of the infrastructure for her show, at least the dissemination branch of it, and paid pretty well. But she doesn't need them. It's better for her and all those other people. Matt Walsh is the next one. I hope he leaves that ship as well, to just build up your own audience on Rumble, on Odyssey, on YouTube. One of the conflicts is that she's a Christian and the owners of the Daily Wire are very much not. But what kicked this all off is one of the things was the conflict of those two countries in that warm, sandy region of the world that's been going on for 4 months now. The whole thing is kind of funny because before all this happened, there's some quotes from Ben and the other guy who co-owns the Daily Wire, and they're talking about diversity of thought and that they wouldn't fire Candace for disagreements when the Kanye West kind of stuff all hit the news. It was like they're willing to just say, well, we're not all going to agree on every issue, and then the October 7th thing hit, and suddenly their tune changed. And she started to mention with that there are two sides to every story, and she was shown the door. Turns out that diversity of thought stops when Shapiro's personal interests are at stake. He's the guy who had the line, he doesn't give a darn about the browning of America. You go, what? Why wouldn't you? Don't the demographics matter? It's like, you really think people are fungible? And it's like, if you're conservative, in quotes, you're not a conservative if you don't care about demographics, because what are you conserving? It's like it took a certain people to create a certain country. If you really don't care, if you really think ideas are going to shape the DNA, I mean, then you're like, that's subversive Bolshevism right there. I mean, it's like you're just a globalist by another name. It's like, well, yeah, obviously. So anyway, the camps are divided. Obviously, I'm on Team Candace, but I also recognize that people in the mainstream are allowed in the mainstream. You're not over target until you start getting them coming for you, and it starts where you're on YouTube and you get demonetized. Like Elijah Schaffer is still just barely on YouTube. He got demonetized, but they still let him up there. So it is kind of, there's a lot of people like him who are right on the edge, and he even contacted YouTube and said, hey, what's going on? I don't violate any terms of service, or at least I didn't when I was demonetized. And they said the people, these SJW kids, they just complained so repeatedly that they just demonetized them to demonetize his channel to appease him. It's like, well, the channel's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to him, and they just at whim demonetized them. So when you're over target, you're getting banned from Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, Morgan, MasterCard, and the rest. And I mentioned those companies specifically from memory because they have literally banned people from their services because they had the wrong political opinions. Even Lauren Southern's family was renting an Airbnb somewhere, and they were banned because they were connected to her. And then she went public with it, and they go, oh, well, sorry, just a mistake. It's like, yeah, it wasn't a mistake. When you get kicked off of YouTube and the rest of the mainstream, then you're probably over target. So Candace is going in the right direction. And the thing is, YouTube cracked down on, after Trump got elected, they never wanted that to happen again, so they made it possible. They made it like a people's president, a grassroots type of thing, impossible simply by kicking off thousands of those right-of-center channels that were huge in 2016. And I think they're all gone. Actually, I think they're all that's why YouTube is just kind of a dead zone. There's nothing real going on YouTube. It's all just makeup tutorial type of videos. So Candace Owens is going in the right direction, but she'd be risking millions of dollars if she decides to start live streaming with Vincent James or the Red Elephants, was one of the channels that got kicked off, or Black Pilled, or Way of the World, or Red Ice, or Jared Taylor, American Run. There was a bunch of these. Some of them were like Dr. David Duke was on YouTube at one time, believe it or not. And I listened to him a few times, and he was talking about like health and fitness, and he seemed like a really calm, reasonable guy, and they kicked him off. And Tommy Robinson was an English guy who's advocating for English politics over there. It's like the guy never said anything crazy, and they at first they put videos in limited state, which is just a precursor, and then they just kicked him off. And it's like YouTube is fake and lighthearted and frivolous, completely worthless now. So the thing is, if she started live streaming with Vincent James, Nick Fuentes, Elijah Schaffer types, will she be risking millions of dollars? Because her property, her name, her brand is worth in the tens of millions of dollars. But she said she wanted to do a live stream with Shapiro and start discussing everything that happened at the Daily Wire. And he seemed so eager to live stream with her, except I think he's co-owner of the Daily Wire, and they sued her to get her a gag order to cease and desist from any discussion. So I guess you're not that eager to talk to Candace Owens. You might be afraid of something. So the thing is, while she was in vacation, she was in Europe on vacation, Shapiro publicly schedules her for a debate on his home territory in his studio. So he looked like a total worm because she answers him. She goes, like, yeah, I'm in Sweden skiing or something, which is public information. And he very much is a worm. So they keep talking about doing a live stream together, which would obviously do huge numbers. I mean, back in the day, Sargon of Akkad did a live stream. There was like a, who was that guy? Oh, God. Sargon of Akkad. There was a bunch of these. This was like old YouTube. Richard Spencer. And who's that guy who was like, he was referring to Locke and Loki, and I forget the guy's name, Andy Worski. And there was like a half a dozen of these people, and it was the number one trending on YouTube. And that was back in the day when you could have Richard Spencer and Sargon of Akkad and Styx Hexenhammer, who he himself got demonetized, discussing things on YouTube, which is what the platform was supposed to be. Just YouTube, your TV, your video hosting platform, and it's very much not anymore. But that's kind of good because Rumble picked up the slack and Odyssey picked up the slack, and even people have set up their own private, like Cozy is Nick Fuentes' private thing. This guy John Minadio has got his own GTV type of live streaming platform, and these kind of things are coming and going. It's like, well, yeah, necessity is definitely the mother of invention here. So the Daily Wire is apparently terrified of Ben Shapiro sort of exposing his true face to the normies, which would, I guess, would hurt the Daily Wire. So they sued to block the two of them from talking together about these issues. Kind of a little suspect there. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys all next episode.